Hello, my fellow readers. This is iDarkSymphony777 with another fan fiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story. And finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, I am doing two stories today. They are The Sea Shadow by Fire Flamers X9Z. Nice. And Blanked Out by Anticipate. Also nice. We're going to start with The Sea Shadow. It is a Mario fanfiction, and this one kind of interests me because it has Vivian in it. Vivian's best girl. Best partner! Unfortunately, sad to say, the story's not that good. However, I will say, the premise is amazing. This is sort of, honestly, an actual retelling of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, but one thing happens with the changes with the timeline, and that is Bobbery adopts Vivian as his daughter. That is honestly a very amazing concept. It's just like you have Vivian, who is like nearly killed Bobbery. Well, oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me just. I get like this when I talk about Vivian because, come on, it's Vivian. Come on. I got a plushie of her. I don't care. I can talk about her all I want. So the story starts way before, like years before the events of Thousand Year Door. Bobbery is going through one of his moods. As you all, if you have not played Thousand Year Door, Bobbery's backstory is that he was a sailor, and he fell in love with this woman named Scarlet, and he loved her. He loved her more than anything in the world, just as much as he loved sailing. However, one time when he did sail, Scarlet got very ill and passed away, and Bobbery took it hard, very, very hard, and blamed himself for it because it's like, hey, my one love for sailing cost the life of my other love. And he kind of spent implied to be years just in an emotionally depressed mood because he could not get over the death of his wife, over someone he genuinely loved. However, but in this version, when he decides to leave to go for like a liquor run, he comes across Vivian inside a little ramshackle shade, completely beaten with an inch of her life, one of her eyes missing. Bobbery decides to take care of her and then officially decides to adopt her. I thought, this is a really cool idea. Like, I really want to see what the idea of a sailor Vivian, like Bobbery raising Vivian, how is she gonna, learn to live? Like, she has a missing eye. She basically puts on she has to wear an eye patch. She gets in her mind that she's a pirate. It's a really cool thing. It's like, I can't wait for this alternate universe. And then it turns out, instead of what I was expecting, like the story of Bobbery raising Vivian, all the trials and tribulations behind that, we get Thousand Year Door. Never mind that Thousand Year Door would disappoint me in any way. One of my personal favorite video games ever made. And it disappointed me here because I didn't really want to expect it to be this. It's such a petty thing to complain about too. Because, it's basically Thousand Year Door. But Vivian's a pirate. And also a smartass. But it's like, the idea of Bobber raising a daughter just sounded so interesting, and the whole idea of like Vivian becoming a different person, and probably like how is Beldam and Marilyn going to deal with the situation? Them like bullying her, like they find like I was expecting a completely different thing, and then I got this, and then when I read through it, it's like the interest kind of went away. Now, I'm not saying this is a completely horrible story, because it still latches on to a very interesting idea, like how would Vivian react, like behave if she was raised by Bobbery, and her behavior kind of changes. Like she's pretty much a smartass. She constantly snarks. It's it's just simultaneously the it's hard to describe. For the first half, the first problem I have with this. The second half is obvious, despite the fact the story revolves specifically around Vivian. Vivian's barely a character, but the first part is plot related, and it's such a wasted concept. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go with. It's a wasted concept for what should have been a really interesting growing up story. And I know, and the author is perfectly allowed to write whatever they want. I'm not going to shame the author. I'm not going to badmouth the author. But this was a really wasted idea. Like that's basically what this story is. And a waste of a really, really good idea. The first chapter or so, but just like going on the neat idea, and just the fact that it's 1,000 Year Door retread, a very short 1,000 Year Door retread. That's understandable because like by the time Mario gets Vivian, it's literally like halfway through the game. Like he gets Vivian like around the halfway point, and then he gets Bobbery like past the halfway point. So I'm not expecting the entire journey. The fact that it skips so much, there are some parts that that make sense to skip, like the whole General White thing. Like, oh yeah, that shit, that's fine. But like, there's no fight. There's like the fighting is like two sentences because it's like, oh, let's just fight. Boom, dead. Oh, okay. There's just nothing of substance behind the first chapter, and it kind of stinks. I can't really even say anything about the characters because Vivian is a good concept. It's just she's just a flat character that is just built off the basis of the idea. Just nothing behind it. Piece wise, it's way too fast. I'm okay with it, like being like fast paced at the beginning because Vivian, like when Bobbery finds Vivian, she's on death's door, so that's kind of makes sense to have it be like fast paced for that to kind of to represent saving her. That's fine. But after that, it should have been much slower, much slower for the idea to do well. Grammar, grammar's fine. I have nothing wrong with the sentence structure and the grammar. That's completely fine. I have nothing bad to say about that. What would I recommend this story? No, I can't. I don't. It just. I can't. I have to be fair. I can't recommend this story. I don't really have a favorite part. What would I fix about this story? A lot. There's a lot. There's a lot you can fix because you could take this in two directions. One, you take it in the same direction as it was, retread of 1,000 Year War. Needs to be much longer if you have to go that route. When it comes to something like 1,000 Year Door, you can take shortcuts here and there. Like I said with the General White idea, cutting that out, perfectly reasonable. Uh, but cutting out so much, there's there's barely any like related stuff. The closest you get to like actual 1,000 Year Door content is like the whole Kill Hawk Key situation at the beginning, where like where Flavio and Pop Patch are just talking shit at each other. That's fine. But it really should have been long. It really should have been longer. Like, or hell, he could have just had the entire story just revolve around them ending up at Kill Hall Key. Hell, that would have been an interesting idea. Just have this, just not even the entire thing. Just, oh, here's just chapter 5, like the entirety of it, like a very, very descriptive version of it. Just Vivian's a pirate. I be a pirate. I set you on fire. Is that a blunder? Yes. There's so like just really expand on it. You can do the whole. There's a whole thing with Vivian constantly hitting on Gumbella. That's kind of tacked on. You could easily make it like more natural if you go this route because you have more time for them to interact. You have more time for all the characters to kind of get to know each other and care. There's nothing to officially attach to it in this version. So there needs to be an extent. There needs to be way longer, and it needs to have everything fleshed out. Or you take the second route, focus on those first chapters, disregard everything from Thousand Year Door, and have it be an alternate universe where Bobbery is just raising Vivian. Like, okay, Beldam and Marilyn, they just live in Ruport. You can have the other partners show up there and show how Vivian kind of you could do this as like a textbook example of like showing like how sailing works. Like, okay, Vivian wants to be a sailor. But Bobbery is so afraid of what happened to Scarlet that he's refusing to teach her. Like, he's constantly giving her outs. Like, oh, you could have him teach you. Have him teach you. You could have a whole sub, like, first half of the story subplot of just like Bobbery raising Vivian and Vivian kind of making Bobbery move on from that instant, just being there for each other. You could make it like a big family thing. It'd be very interesting. Of course, you would have Beldam show up. She'd be like she'd be a bully. You can probably just make her young. Hell, you can make Beldam younger. Have her be like Vivian's mom in this version, or hell, you could have like the Shadow Queen be called. I don't know anyone. One be the villain. Be like, instead of like a big like the big demonic demon, she's basically like an asshole, like a big statuesque dummy mommy who just didn't want any more kids, and just ditched Vivian. You can just do. There's a bunch you can do with the idea that just seeing a retread of this, a very badly done retread of Thousand Year Door, just stunk up the whole joint. I can't say anything more than that. Whether you take the Thousand Year Door, just extending the idea, or just the alternate universe idea, I think either one have their pros and cons. It depends on how the execution has worked. But that's really all I have to say about it. The interesting one is Blanked Out by Anticipate. This is a Neptunia fanfiction. You're probably wondering, what is Neptunia? Neptunia, yes. It is a video game franchise created by Compile Heart that is basically you take the PS3, the Xbox 360, the Nintendo Wii, and a Sega console that got discontinued that was supposed to come out after the Dreamcast, and you turn them into anime girls. That's basically Neptunia. Blonde, the main character of the story, is the Nintendo Wii. Guess how she acts? She doesn't act the way you think she's gonna act. I find it funny that Blonde. Okay, so to give a roundabout explanation, Blonde's character in canon Neptunia is that she is supposed to represent Nintendo, the family friendly. She's a bad mouth sailor. Like half the time she opens her mouth, it's usually saying something incredibly demeaning and something insulting, has a hair-fired trigger, and it's completely in character for her because Nintendo happens to have a game that literally had the Guinness World Record for most curses said in a video game. I shit you not. It has that. House of the Dead Overkill. That is such a random ass world record. That is just the most random Guinness World Record ever. Most curses said in a video game. House of the Dead. Overkill. But it apparently exists. This story takes place sometime after the events of, I think it's because the naming conventions for the tuning games are hard. Because there's like Mega Dimension, and there's Hyper Dimension, and there's Tag Dimension, which is like the blonde spinoff. There's Cyber Dimension, which was the Four Goddesses Let's Play I did a while back. I think I'm trying to remember if this was Mega Dimension or Hyper Dimension. I think it's Mega Dimension. Mega Dimension V2. Because Seashaw shows up, who debuted in that game. So the story kind of starts with three CPU goddesses kind of arguing because Neptune is just MIA. Yeah, that seems Neptune enough to do that. Vert, who represents Xbox 360. There's Blonde, Nintendo. Vert, Xbox. Noir, who is PlayStation, and Neptune, who is the Sega Neptune. Vert is complaining over the fact that because of heightened monster spawnings, less people are really visiting her land, which apparently relies a lot on tourism. We got a neat little reference to the Nintendo theme park, because Vert blames Blonde for sucking up some of the tourism because she built a theme park. Yes, because we got to have a reference to Nintendo World. Blonde said, no, I approved that a while ago. That bullshit. You agreed with it. And then they ended up fighting. Netgear is there. Netgear is supposed to represent the Sega Game Gear. And they basically just have lots of arguing and stuff like that. Blonde goes home to Louis. The other hint that it's based off the Wii, Louis. And tries to get back into work. However, she finds out her two sisters, Rom and Ram, who are representative of the Nintendo DS, have messed with, kind of drew over her books and all that. They basically wanted to hang out with her. Blonde, however, can't really get much stuff done because she finds out that more than likely there is something going on with the monsters. She kind of immediately cottons onto the fact that someone's making the monsters. She tries to find out where they might be. She finds a cave that eventually kind of reveals that, yeah, it's some workers who work for the tower that they all built. They collapse the tower. Neptune kind of shows up. Blonde and Neptune fight. Neptune wins, and then they all kind of agree to go off and try and figure out the whole end game. Here's my one big problem with this story, is from a plot standpoint, and that is Neptune. I get the point the author is trying to make with Neptune's role. So, in context, Neptune fights Blonde because she realizes that Blonde is very stressed out. She's very stretched out in the story. So, Neptune manages to fight Blonde. Neptune defeats Blonde as Purple Heart. And then basically Purple Heart tries to coax Blonde to actually reveal what's going on. Blonde, in a very well-crafted meta-narrative, is overwhelmed by all the stress she's had to deal with for years and years, having to run Nintendo by herself. This is playing into the whole problem that a lot of people seem to have with Japanese culture, or more worrying, is due to the fact that a lot of Japanese citizens like to overwork themselves. Famously, if you played follow all the DLC for Smash Ultimate, Sakurai worked himself into going to the hospital because he was that determined to finish all the DLC, which shows that the deal with Sakurai, that's not That's not rare. No, that's very common apparently in Japan. Japanese citizens like really overwork themselves. They don't really have much time to relax, and that's apparently one of the main reasons why there's declining birth rates in that country. Blonde stress is a direct reference to that idea. The fact that she has to work. She has to work because she feels that Rom and Rand aren't ready to run the country, and also the fact that she's so used to overworking herself that she really doesn't know. She can't really come up with an idea of what would happen when she has nothing to do. Which is spoiler alert. This happens at the end of the story. She actually has like a small existential crisis when Rom and Ram go behind her back to do all her work, leaving her with nothing to do, and she's just in a slight internal panic over that idea. I think that's a really, really cool narrative point. However, why did it have to be Neptune? That's what I don't get. I get the reason behind it because Sega and Nintendo, out of all the game consoles that are still functioning, they're the last longest living ones. Not counting Atari, because Atari is like a villain in the Neptunia franchise. I think. I know, like in the third game, Atari was like the main villain. I can't remember what the character's name was. I get the rationale, but Ramen, the whole idea, the whole core concept of Blonde's character is that she's feeling overwhelmed by working herself to excruciatingly dangerous detail because she's worried that Ram and Ram would not be able to help her with the job, especially since Louis in this version of the story, because Neptunia has to deal with multiverse shenanigans. Don't ask me, it just does. No, Nintendo is basically independent, representing. I said Nintendo, not Louis. Louis acts very independent of its people in reference to how Nintendo kind of tries to do its own thing rather than the other companies that kind of do cross collapse stuff. It's a big thing. It's Nintendo speak. You don't understand. And she doesn't feel that Ram and Ran are ready. Why couldn't the author have had Ram and Ram do it instead? Because that would have made things a whole lot. It still would have worked in the context of the story because Ram and Ram are like connected to Blonde's character arc in this short story. But I don't know. Neptune can work too because of the whole Sega connection and stuff like that. It's just Neptune comes off as very tacked on in the story. That's what I'm trying to say. I get why the author chose Neptune. It doesn't stop the fact that she does come off as just kind of forced in there for the sake of a narrative plot that easily could have been done with Ram and Ram. Moving on, the finale of the plot is basically the people who are behind this were actually disgruntled workers who built the tap, because the very first part of the story happens in like a meeting room inside this tower, and Blonde kind of breaks I believe she breaks a couple pieces, and the disgruntled workers are actually tired of her more than the other ones, because apparently all four of them do it, constantly breaking shit, and they lost business opportunities. They lost love lives. Some of them applied that like their marriages are falling apart. They're losing a lot of stuff because the CPUs, namely Blonde, are constantly destroying them, and so they can't really. They're just kind of stuck in a. It's a microcosm of what Blonde is going through, and that's what kind of gets through to her, is the fact that she kind of directly influenced all this. That's why she, at the end, when they kind of quote unquote beat the bad guys, because they don't really do it, she just kind of spooks them. That she kind of realizes that she was partially she was mostly at fault. The other CPUs did it too. Well, mostly her, because they directly reference anger issues. Blonde's whole thing is the fact that she has anger issues. And then eventually, at the end, Blonde realized that Ramen Ram right behind her back, done all her work, and she starts writing up drafts of eventually telling Ramen Ram that basically goodbye. Because at the end of the day, Blonde eventually realizes that she has to, if someday, eventually, have to give up Loe to Ramen Ram, because she's been doing the same thing for for an insurmountable amount of time. It is very sad, and it does play on the whole Japanese mentality, because a lot of people are wondering how Nintendo will function once Miyamoto passes away. So it's very much a parallel between the two, like the whole like successor. It's like, okay, who's going to take over Miyamoto? Who will take over Blonde? And even like a little nice moment at the end where Ram and Ram are going to try and make like doodle in Blonde's books again. But Ron oversees one of the letters, one of the drafts that she wrote, and she starts crying because she doesn't want to, because she's convinced that, they don't want Blonde is saying goodbye. And it turns out it was a draft. You know, it's a really nice plot overall. As I said, the only thing I had issue with was Neptune. Didn't really have anything else bad wrong with the plot. Character wise, I really liked Blonde's character. Ramen Ram's characters were fine for what they are. They could have been done better, because if you replaced them with if you had Neptune replaced with them, it would have impacted their characters much more to realize how important Blonde's Blonde's whole mentality of wanting, of the whole working versus not working thing. It would have been much more heavy to have it be Ramen Ram. It also would have helped their characters, because they would have realized that Blonde is not Blonde really is struggling with all this. I really like the characters. I don't have anything wrong with them. Even the minor characters, like the workers and the other CPUs, they're good. They're functional for what they are. But Blonde is the obvious star here. Grammar, nothing wrong with the grammar, but I want to actually point out something. The author tends to have a more simplistic writing style when it's in third person. However, when it's in first person, told from Blonde's thoughts, it goes to this overly parody of a purple prose type writing, which makes sense for Blonde's character, because part of Blonde's character is the fact that she's a writer. She honestly thinks like doing this very ostentatious writing process makes a good story, and it's had even played up in her spinoff Mega Tag Dimension. No, Tag Dimension. I don't know why I said Mega Tag Dimension, where she basically pretends to be a director, and she and people constantly complained about like, Lon, your writing sucks. Why? It's full of flowery purple prose. Exactly, that's why it sucks. This does not fit a zombie movie. What makes you say that, Neptune? It's common sense. What say you, Fert? Boobs. Is that what all you have to say? That's what my entire character has become. No, I'm staying out of this. Good. Goodbye, Noir. Goodbye. It's very in character for Blonde's thought process to go this overtly over the top prosy style. And this is the type of purple prose that I like. The ones that enhance the story rather than detract. Take notes. And I think it's a nice detail. Pacing wise, I think the pacing's perfect. It's not too long, because it gives us enough time to get to understand where Blonde's character is coming from, but not too short that it kind of feels like it's rushed or anything. So I don't have anything bad to say about it. Would I recommend this story? Yes. I do think, like I said, my only complaint is Neptune's role in the whole thing. If I had to fix anything, take Neptune out, just have Ram and Ram deal with Blonde. I think that whole part would have been much better with just Blonde, Ram, and Ram. But that's optional. I think Neptune's role for what she was trying to do, I think it makes sense for Neptune to do this sort of thing. So it's not a big deal that if it's kept like this instead of switching to Ram and Ram. That's just an opinion. That's just what I think. Okay, favorite part. Mm, I don't really have a favorite part. Like I would honestly maybe say the ending where Ram is reading the letter because you can feel the you can actually, if you're read through the whole story, you can actually feel the emotion, and Ram's crying, and even like when Ram is trying to convince Ram, it's like, come on, we gotta keep doodling, and like Ram basically grabs Ram behind around the shoulders, bows her, it's like, we're going. It's like, what, huh? And Ram's just completely confused, like wondering why you dragging me, Ram, what are you doing? It's like, we're going to stay in our room. Ah, I gotta doodle. It's a cute scene, but also has a lot of emotion packed behind it. But that's it. I don't really have anything else to say about this story. It's a good overall solid story. It has like not a lot of nice references to real Japanese culture. I think it's a really nice nuance, not really super nuanced, but nuanced enough that if you know what's going on, it makes the story so much better. That's just my opinion. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and